ni wewe walefuaya kafa wabalanda we umfokulira kwa bantu kasama yuti bose batinda be abakulu n'abana bose bashitata n'abana bayo banelila we mwamba kasama ile fire iwe wile we boweshi mwamba later experience olakale we bomba mwamba Emmanuel bose bakasama wale fire mwamba Emmanuel Mwamba Emmanuel Bongazama wakulira Tulefwaya mwamba wesu Emmanuel Chipane ni PF Tulefwaya mwamba wesu Emmanuel Wakuito uwele Emmanuel mwamba mbasata Emmanuel Tulefwaya Emmanuel mwamba mbasata Emmanuel Bongazama wakulira Tulefwaya mwamba
Good day. Today our call is for government to pay local suppliers and contractors. And then we'll discuss the general position of debt by, that government has. Government is sitting on a stockpile of debt. It's a huge pile. $14.8 billion is our external debt. That comprises 13.25 of government debt, and the difference of about $1.2 billion is government guaranteed debt to public owned enterprises, the state-owned enterprises like ZESCO. That's our foreign debt, $14.8 billion. Local debt is 203 billion kwacha. This comprises, the bulk of it is to treasury bills and government bonds. Remember, this government is running its budget on budget deficit, so it's financing most of its budget through borrowings from Bank of Zambia, and the debt there stands at $203 billion. But of that debt of 203 billion kwacha is 77 billion kwacha. That is money owed to suppliers, contractors for fuel, and the outstanding debt that ZESCO has with independent power producers. So 77 billion kwacha. A lot of people have been talking about lack of money in the economy, that there is no money supply in the economy. It has to do, especially with the local debt. First, the debt is huge, 203 billion kwacha. That's about $11.8 billion of money that government owes the private sector. And for me, my concern now is to contractors and suppliers. They are owed about 44 billion kwacha. Now, if in an economy, government is keeping, in fact, the total is 77 billion kwacha if we include what ZESCO owes independent power producers and what the government owes oil marketing companies, the total debt comes to 77 billion kwacha. Then to contractors and suppliers is about 44 billion kwacha. This is too huge, a lot of money for government to keep on holding on. Government must settle and dismantle this debt. You have heard many companies have closed, sites have been deserted, and companies are going into bankruptcy. Owners are in trouble with the banks because government owes this money to them. There's no government that takes pride in having so much money, that it is holding against its own citizens and the private sector. We are literally bankrupting the private sector if we don't dismantle this debt. I have seen and taken a keen interest in what government is doing with the foreign debt. Well, it's been doing very well. It has applied maximum attention by the President and the Minister of Finance. You've heard of a creditors committee comprising of China, and France as co-chair, and other creditors that we owe money, that we should clear this $14.8 billion. There is attention paid to it, and for government, this has tied to the International Monetary Fund bailout, the $1.3 billion bailout that was announced. This money will not be disbursed until the creditors committee agree on how to restructure Zambia's debt or how to forgive some of its debt. There are delays there, and there are a lot of concerns. We have the Minister of Finance announcing that the International Monetary Fund President, Madam Kristalina Georgieva, is due to visit the country next week. And she also issued a statement where she expressed concern that the creditors committee hasn't met to resolve some of the issues, so that Zambia then can IMF can then disburse this $1.3 billion to the Zambian government. We have issues there. You have a government that's relying on national budget that should be funded by this IMF bailout. Last year, this money didn't come. This year, the money hasn't come. My call to government and to Honorable Msokotwane and President Hakainde Hichilema is concentrate on raising local resources. What is your domestic revenue streams like? Why have you abandoned collecting proper money to the mining sector? Why are you giving all these unfair incentives and tax holidays to the mining sector? Why don't you collect this money? Why are you relying on money that is not here? Why are you chasing the IMF wind? The PF chased the IMF wind for 5 years. You are going into the second year chasing the IMF. It's not the proper way to run a country. Raise money from your local resources. I was looking at the database by Zambia Revenue Authority and how many people pay taxes. Well, you have very few people paying taxes, about 2.8 million people paying taxes out of a population of over 20 million. And of this, the only guaranteed income usually comes just from a few, especially a few workers that pay as you earn. And many companies are still not paying. And then you have the big ones, the mining sector, that has a lot of incentives and tax holidays. And even if they pay, their contribution to our national GDP and to our domestic revenue is very, very little. They are the biggest exporter, 77% of our exports comprises copper, cobalt, and other minerals. But what's their contribution to the national purse, to our domestic revenue? About 10%. That's not enough. You have you and me paying more than the mining sector. You have traders, you have wholesalers paying more than the mining sector. Yet the mining sector is supposed to be the biggest revenue for this country, largest exporter, biggest forex earner, yet they pay very little tax to our system. So, Mr. Msokotwane, I think pay attention to the raising of domestic revenue. The reliance on this IMF will take us nowhere. We have a national and economic crisis in the country. Milling meal prices going up. You have no medicines. The FISI program collapsed. We have a maize shortage right now where millers are complaining. Government exported most of its maize and now it has remained with little, and I have heard that they've now restricted FRA to only give millers. So we have a crisis before the next harvest comes in, which also has been threatened by the failure by FISI. So we'll have a food crisis in this country. We have the highest cost of living in the last 30 years. You cannot rely on the IMF for you to bail out such an economy. You have to scrounge around and raise your own resources. Mr. Msokotwane, it's not your duty to bankrupt those local businesses. It is government's duty to shore up, the reserves of our local businesses. The businesses that they engage in, it's government's duty to ensure that these small and medium enterprises are given their due. Then they pay their suppliers, they finish the contracts, and the economy then becomes viable. But you cannot have 77 billion kwacha of your citizens' money you are holding on. This is the second year you are not paying. Let me speak about the audit. You heard that the minister said that he had employed 6 independent consultants, auditing firms, the Pricewaterhouse, Ernst & Young, and 4 others to audit this public debt. They were engaged in July 2022, and the mandate was for 2 months for them to audit all this entire local debt. Well, we are going now to 7 months. Where is the report? Why is government still using the excuse that local suppliers and contractors have not been paid because the local debt is being audited? And we know that you are paying. You've paid First Quantum some money. You have paid CEC some money, especially the VAT refunds from Zambia Revenue Authority. Why are you selective in approach? Pay the local suppliers, pay the local contractors, so that the vibrancy in the economy comes. You'll be saving lives. You'll be saving businesses. You will be saving this country. You cannot be part to the destruction of the local businesses in this country. So with those few words, colleagues, it's good day until we have another topic. God bless you and God bless this country.
Emmanuel ni huevo